All right, Michelle, welcome to Studio 9.
Amazing. Thank you.
Our amazing, stupendous podcast that we have here. So, Michelle, let's start right from the beginning because you need to explain to me one more time the pronunciation of your last name, so everyone can remember, and everyone who's listening for the first time will know who you are, and then we're going to get into the story. So tell me, Michelle, your name.
Yeah, so my name is Michelle Chikwanine, and it's pronounced chick, like a little baby chicken.
Chick.
Wa, like a baby crying.
Wow.
Ni, the ni that we all have, and then ne, the sound the horse makes. So Chikwanine.
Chikwanine.
Yes.
Michelle Chikwanine.
Yes.
And if you say it fast, it just flows.
It just flows, yes.
Yeah. Have you had some pretty bizarre like names, like your name being like just destroyed? Yeah.
Like Chikna, like Chika9, all variations of it. So
As a speaker, did you give up trying to explain, or just like did you like? Because I heard the introduction and they said they want to see if I can get this right. You said they want to see if you get it right. Do you do that? Like good luck, or do you try and help them?
I honestly see it as an opportunity because when it first happened, I used to get really upset. I'm like, come on, it's not really difficult. But then I realized as a speaker, you're always looking for places to add more to your presentation, just more to add to the crowd, to interact with especially. And I saw this opportunity as a good icebreaker. I already have, my story is quite heavy enough. So you have to have moments of breathing for the crowd itself, for them to laugh and sort of capture them. And
to break that tension.
Yeah, exactly. So my last name, I saw as an opportunity for an icebreaker. Right?
Well, it's great. It's fantastic. And I will never forget your name. I mean, I knew this already, but I will never forget your name.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget you. And
awesome.
because your story is, it's incredible. It's heartbreaking. It's inspiring in terms of where you are now and the fact that you've gotten to where you are. Take us back to, if you can, and I know you take a lot of time to explain the story, but a little bit of the backstory. So take us back to, growing up and getting to where you were. Just take us back to the beginning, or your earliest, like the earliest memories of what we're talking about here. Just take us back to the beginning of you.
Right. I grew up in a very normal family, and I think the point of my presentation was to try and draw that out, because I think sometimes there's such a huge disconnection of that side of the world. We never really get to hear those stories. And so I grew up in a very normal family with 2 older sisters, a younger sister. I was the only boy in my family, so my dad loved me the most. Not true.
Well, of course, absolutely. I mean, why not?
No, but my dad really loved the fact that he had a boy. He really had wanted that, and we spent a lot of time together. My dad was my best friend in many ways growing up. Even though I was a little bit of a troublemaker and a shit disturber, he always wanted to give me lessons. And so I grew up in that environment of a man who was just incredibly powerful and a good human being, an activist. My mom was a women's rights activist, so activism was a huge part of who I am as a kid. And that sort of navigated the world through that lens of activism, of seeing sort of the injustice that was happening around. Even at a very young age, I noticed that. And so when the injustice that I faced in my own life of being a child soldier and going through that experience became almost like a strange reality, trying to comprehend, like, why me? Why my family? Why did I have to go through all of that? And so that was a very difficult sort of time to try and figure out, like, my place in life after having such difficulties. And so when I came back home after being kidnapped as a child soldier, my dad sort of tried to shelter me from the world. And I was always with him whenever he was either at a meeting or when he was leading a rally with students. I was always by his side. The day he was kidnapped, I was with my mom. We were actually by his side, and then we went away. And then by the time we came back, he was gone. And so the childhood that I had in Congo was very tumultuous, from being a child soldier to your dad being kidnapped, and all of these happened in a very short span of time, and then ended up as a refugee. And so that was sort of the Congo aspect of it, of me growing up as a childhood. But more than that, I even though there was such hardship, I'm so grateful that I grew up in that town. From the characters of the old men slapping people in the market to the beautiful women with all these clothing, and their work ethic to me was what was really important. And those were the things that I saw in my community: work ethic, community, empathy, compassion. Those are all qualities that were in my town despite the hardship that was going on.
When you look back at your life and your childhood, so you moved, so tell us again, you moved to Canada. How old were you?
I was 16 when I moved to Canada.
So you were in Africa from birth to 16.
Yeah.
When you look, how old are you now?
I'm 30.
30.
Yeah.
So you 14 years in Canada. You're looking now, and you're looking at North American young people, and you see their childhood.
Right.
How do you feel when you see a young person in North America, in the U.S., in Canada, and are you able to wrap your head around like that upbringing compared to yours?
Yeah. It was a very difficult. So when I first moved to Canada, I saw, left Congo, went to Uganda, became a refugee, lived another different reality of like having nothing, because I went from a family, we're like middle class family with a home and a house and a gate, and we're at least privileged to have things that most people in my town did not have. Left that, became a refugee with nothing in a plastic tent, literally lost everything. And we started from zero. Then my father died, and so the sadness of being a refugee and that reality was what I came with to Canada as a 16-year-old. And my world had changed at that point. And I came to Canada knowing that there was great wealth in this place. And it's exactly what I saw. And I went to school, and it's the reality that hit me, seeing how kids felt entitled in a way. One of the things that I never talk about was actually one of the things that pushed me to speak. Was in my grade 10 English class. I was sitting down, and the teacher looked at the seat that I was sitting at, and he said, everyone that sits in a seat has an amazing story to tell. He didn't know me, and I remember looking at him, I was like, are you talking to me? And he said, I want everyone to write an epiphany essay on something that's important to you, an aha moment. And behind me, I heard a girl saying how for her birthday, she wanted her parents to buy her a pink Motorola Razr. That was flip phones when they're still...
the old school flip phones,
they accidentally got her a black Motorola instead of the pink one that she wanted. And so she was saying how parents should listen to their kids because it's going to help them in school to focus. And I remember thinking... At the time, that's when I was also being bullied. And so I remember thinking, oh, they don't know what's happening in Congo, or that the war in Congo is so connected to the issues here. And so it was those connections in school, and seeing how, so almost like we're very sheltered, a sheltered life, that I needed to sort of bring out the reality in that. But the greatest thing that I've seen, especially living here now, as growing up and seeing young people who have become my friends as well, is the incredible ability to be compassionate and to be empathetic when they realize what is happening, when they learn, when they become critical thinkers and critical readers and people, they start to connect the world, and they see the ability to connect to the world is great, right? And we see that whether it's at this event or at many other summits that happen everywhere. It's just young people have the ability to be very compassionate. The March for Our Lives very recently, another example of just young people.
Amazing.
Right?
Yeah. It's interesting because I think what's important, for people like to hear your story, for young people to hear your story, living in North America, is that perspective, right? It's like, oh my gosh, like Michelle's story is... And I said this to someone after the first time I ever heard you speak was, I can't understand what Michelle's telling me.
Right.
Like I can't even relate to. I can relate to if your parents are divorced and my parents are divorced, I can relate to that, but I can't relate to your story. And so I think that's a real struggle. Right. Do you think you are? Do you think if you had not come to Canada, what do you think? Where would you?
Where would I be had I not come to Canada?
If you not come to the West?
Very interesting question. For a very long time, I dreamt of becoming a soccer player. That was my biggest dream.
Right.
It was either going to be a lawyer or a soccer player, and those were things I wanted to achieve. However, I think that was right before my father passed away. When my father passed, I think, in many ways, I saw it as an opportunity to continue his legacy, So whether I'd come to Canada or not, I think I would still be working in this sort of field in a different way. I'd probably be more inclined in the political field rather than more in the social sort of justice field in general. I mean, politics and social justice can intermingle in many ways, but that's sort of probably where I would have been more. But who knows? I mean, life can throw you so many different things. But yeah.
You say that the Congo is the greatest country in the whole world.
In the whole
Living now in the West, in
Yeah.
North America and Canada,
Yeah.
I mean, have you embraced Canada?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
So it's like a close second?
it's a close second.
Okay. All right.
I think it's just that the idea of home. You know, if you're Canadian and you were born here, you'll say Canada is the greatest country in the world.
Right.
In America, they'll challenge you like, no, we're
100%.
the greatest.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's more of like a world thing.
Right.
But I think Congo to me is the greatest country in the world in terms of just the people. Like, and anyone that has ever traveled to the Congo, despite all the things that happen, it's like these people are full of life and they never stop. And then in Canada, one of the things that I really, really enjoy about Canada and I've loved is you have this nation that is so different really from any other country on the planet and is shaping itself and the people that live in it to a new reality that's happening in the world, and you're seeing it every single day.
I remember hearing someone say, Shane Koisen, who's a
Yes,
great
yes,
spoken
yes,
artist,
yes.
he said in one of his poems, he said, Canada is an experiment going right.
Yes.
For once.
Yeah.
For once. I think that's a pretty cool way
Absolutely.
It is an experiment. We're a
Right.
young country.
Yeah.
And who knows what will happen.
Yeah.
But so you're right now currently in the world, you're doing school.
Yes.
So where are you at?
Yeah. So right now I'm just by June I'll be done my undergrad in African Studies and a minor in economics. I've been doing this I've been going through school for 9 years.
Yeah, you're getting old.
They're
You're an old
pushing
student.
it, yeah. And primarily it was because, so when I came to Canada, we didn't have any money. We came as refugees. When you come as a refugee, you owe money. It's not a free. A lot of people tend to think
don't
it's a
think
free.
that.
No, we had to pay for our ticket, visa that brought us here. We ate cookies because you go through this extensive interview for like years and years.
People
And-
don't realize that. People think it's
No.
like,
it's like-
high five,
yeah,
you're in.
No. And then anyway, so we had to pay this money back, and there's interest on it. My mom couldn't work. My younger sister couldn't work at that time. So I had to work. And I worked 3 jobs in high school while I was going to
What
school.
were the jobs?
I was a janitor at a hospital, and at 3 I'd finish school, get on the bus at 4, work from 5 till 8 p.m. as a janitor at Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation in Ottawa. Then I'd walk across the street to the hospital nearby, and I'd work there, Montfort Hospital, work there for 2 hours, finish there, go to IKEA, and I'd work from IKEA until 1 a.m.
What did you do at IKEA? Build those
Janitor as well.
Oh,
I
you
was
did?
doing
Okay.
janitor. All jobs were janitorial
You weren't
jobs.
building those.
No, I was not
horrible- Yeah, the
Not the furnitures.
Wujigajga
No,
dressers. You're not
No.
doing that. All right.
no. But
So you did 3 different jobs.
so I had 3 different jobs in high
And
school,
school.
and school.
You're like, this is in grade 10, grade 11?
I started in grade 11.
Yeah.
Grade 11, and then that really hit me hard.
Yeah.
And
you
my
had no social
my
life.
grades, no, and my grades dropped very very quickly. But all these things also added to why I even started speaking. So my sister gets kidnapped in grade 11 while I was in grade 11, 2006, and this affects me so emotionally. My mom is trying to push me to go to university, and there's all these pressures all around me, and I'm trying to figure out, like, what do I do? But I went to Catholic high school, and the chaplain there saw that I was struggling, and so she pulled me aside and she said, "Have you ever told your story?" And so I told my story to my school for the very first time.
Wow.
And it was such a powerful moment for me, and that's what pushed me, along with the kid that was riding that wanted the Motorola Razor.
So, I mean, I'm wondering if by you telling your story, was that in any way, shape, or form like a way of letting it out go a little bit?
Yes. It's at first I didn't really think that was going to do, because she said, I think it's going to be a helpful moment for you because you have your sister thing, you have work and all these things. It might help to just speak to someone. The first day I spoke to my school, it was almost like a very therapeutic experience. Like everyone was crying. I was crying because it was the very first time I'd ever shared that. And so I cried, but I didn't share my child soldier story, actually. I shared my story as a refugee, because the child soldier story was still something that I wouldn't even accept, something I was still working with my own, And so that pushed me into speaking, and then eventually made my way with the Kielburger brothers, and started speaking with them. And then went back. My mom threatened that if I didn't go back to school, she was going to burn down their office.
Oh my gosh! So you had to make a choice.
So I had to make a choice. What do I do? And so I went to school. But because I couldn't afford to pay for school, I had to work. So the reason why school took so long was I was working, so traveling and speaking, as well as going to school.
So you're still. What's your schedule? Are you busy?
I'm quite busy. Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, this week I'm right after here. Actually, right after tomorrow. So Wednesday I'm on a flight to St. Louis, and I'm there for 3 days, and then I come back.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you could give yourself advice, like
Yes.
if you could go back to your 12-year-old self, your 13-year-old self, what would you say to you?
I'd say take a moment to read.
Read.
I never read. My dad loved reading, but we didn't have, because of just reality of life, we didn't have access to books as much as we are here. And I say reading because I think reading for me has brought reading and writing. Read and write. I think those two things have been so influential in bringing me to a point where I feel so comfortable with myself, and writing in the aspect of reflecting. And I don't think as a society we don't take enough time to reflect. But these are habits we have to create from a very young age. And one thing that I've definitely noticed is that not every young person here reflects. We don't do that. And I think there's such an importance in actually reflecting in ourselves and taking a moment for ourselves, because our society demands so much of us, that by the time we reach our teenage years, by the time we get into university, like, we're lost because we don't even know who we are, and that all comes from, you create those habits, small habits of just taking even 2 hours to sit down and just write. How did you feel today?
Do you keep a journal?
Yes.
And
Yes.
On average, how often do you write now?
I write about, at least every 2 weeks, I try to fill out at least like 4 pages.
Right.
Yeah.
And is that like you just write a few lines, or you just sit down and write 4
It depends
pages?
on how I'm feeling, right?
Right.
So, for example, like this week, I haven't slept for the last 2 weeks. Just not reality of my life. There are days where I'll go and I just can't sleep because my head's just replaying all these vivid memories, and then just social realities of having a girlfriend and all those
School.
kind of school and all of that stuff just impact you, and so I write. Right, like this week, I've written literally almost half of my journal is gone.
Wow,
Just from
journaling's
reflecting.
amazing.
It's incredible.
Some people don't think, especially young men, don't think it's
No.
something that's cool to do.
Oh,
but it's important.
It's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? You finished university, at least your undergrad. Like,
Yes.
what's your 5-year journey right now? If we were to sit down and have another chat 5 years from now in Studio 9,
Yeah.
where'd you be?
I don't know. And I'm getting to be comfortable with the idea of not knowing. I think
Right.
too many being in university, that's the question that we get. So many, like, what do you want to do? And you get all these university students that are so anxious, and because they're like, oh my god, my life is not together. But it's okay to not know. I think there's a power in that. However, I have so many plans that I want to do in the next 5 years. I've gotten so many opportunities through speaking to meet so many incredible people. So General Dallaire is an incredible Canadian hero, one of the people that I admire, and has given me opportunities to work with him on the issue of child soldiers specifically. And then I got the opportunity with the UN fellowship in Geneva, and so that's kind of where I'm looking for. So I want to finish my master's degree, as well as in human rights.
Okay.
And then work within the United Nations Human Rights Commission, or the United Nations Refugee Commission.
At our summer camp program, we have a thing called a flag.
Yes.
And a flag is a fearless, life-altering goal. So
Yes.
it's like the most ridiculous thing you could think yourself
Yes.
doing. Like,
Yeah.
and you can't say, I couldn't do it because I don't have this or that.
Yes,
It's just like,
yeah.
what is the most ridiculous thing? You
Yeah.
would like, what's that one thing, Michelle, you would what's your flag? Like, what would be the one thing? It's like, gosh, if I could just do that. Would you ever want to go back to...
Yes. I'd want to be the president of the Congo.
That's a flag.
Yes.
That's a fearless
Yes.
life. It's huge.
Yeah.
You would do that. That's something you would do.
Yeah.
You can close your eyes and think, gosh, that'd be...
Yes, absolutely. And it sounds very arrogant, but it's not really arrogance. It's more of I think the Congo is at an opportunity. We have 35% of Congo's population, at least in 2012 back then, was under the age of 15. It's an extremely young population. And you have leaders who, in the Congo specifically, who are hell-bent on... They're earning money from this. Our economic structure of the world is so designed that corruption builds in it. So they see that, I'm getting $15 million. I can put it in my pocket. But they're not realizing that the companies that are giving them that $15 million are taking like billions of dollars out. Yeah. Money that could be used to help with education, build infrastructure, and all those things. And so those are dreams that I want for my country.
Right.
Yeah. So
you could do it.
When I close my eyes, that's something I think about.
I can see you doing it.
Yeah.
I really can. I mean, you have an ability and a charisma and a connection with people, all people that are, it's just exceptional.
Oh, thanks.
You should know that. So one thing I always like to ask is, it's 2018, so everyone's got a cell phone.
Right.
If you could send a text, one text message, one sentence text message. I used to say tweet, but I don't use that word anymore.
Yeah.
Tweet's got a bad name now. So, right? So if you could send a text message to everybody all at once, the whole world, boom. What's like so? It's like the old like you get on a billboard.
Right.
What message? Like, what's the text you would send everybody so that like be kind, whatever it is. Like I don't want to put that in your head, but what is the one text you would send to everybody in the world? Your message to everybody.
You are loved.
You are loved.
You are loved.
Why? Why does that come from?
Because I think, my personal opinion, I'm noticing at least what you're noticing in the world. It sounds very corny, but in general, like we're living in a world that's so isolated. Like we're connected, but yet we're so isolated, and we're seeing that whether it's Donald Trump or whatever, right? We're seeing that in our political field, in our societal field, like young people who are depression and all these things. And I think for me, it comes from the aspect of our society where we're becoming so individualized that our sense of community, where we get loved, right, it lacks. And at home, where our parents, if your parents are working really hard, because the standard of living is also high, so parents have to work extra hard. We don't have time to eat with dinner with our kids. All these opportunities to love, and I think being loved really helps you connect as a human being, because if you feel like your base is secure, you will grow in other areas.
Your foundation.
Right? Yes.
Two more questions.
Yes.
One, Trevor Noah, who I'm a big fan of.
Yes.
He was saying the other day about with the whole the Me Too movement and the issues with women's rights and he said in Africa, he said women are held so high, the mothers are held so high, because you're scared of them.
Yeah.
But is there a difference in Africa and the Congo, and is there a difference between how women are held high or treated differently? Is it?
Well, I think the continent, like I said today in my presentation, the continent of Africa is this like interesting continent with so many different people, realities, and cultures. Women in general, yes, I held at a high standard, but I think there's also the continent's history of colonialism has left a legacy of patriarchy, especially with Christianity, has added to it. As sad as the Christianity that was brought to the continent really changed the structures of the continent, so the cultural aspect of the continent. Not all communities, not all cultures were patriarchal. There were matriarchal cultures, for example, in Ghana, where women were the leaders of the communities. But all of that changed. And so you're noticing this young generation that's growing up with this patriarchal society structure that we have in our world. And so they view women through that prism because they are also being impacted through globalization by that. So yes, women are held high in the standard and from cultural perspective, but that's being challenged by sort of the globalization that we're noticing.
Similar problems.
So I would say in the Congo, for example, women are respected, but yet Congo is the rape capital of the world.
Right. Wow.
Right. Rape is used as a weapon of war. So women still are being impacted on a very negative basis. And I think those conversations need to be had, because I think, and that's why I love Thomas Sankara, one of the incredible young leaders in Africa that I highlighted. He was this incredible young man for his time. What he was pushing, like feminism on the continent of Africa, he was pushing old African men to let their women go and work. Things that were like, no, that should never happen. You know what I mean? But those were things that were not happening. He was pushing to happen. And one thing that I really learned from my dad at a very young age was my dad sometimes would wake up and he'd make breakfast and clean the house. Early in the morning, wake up, clean, make breakfast. To me, as a young person, as a young African male, that was revolutionary. Because no one in my town, no male will ever do that because that was a female job. But my dad would always do it as an example that your mom needs a break.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom worked really hard.
You can do
and
this.
you can do this too. You shouldn't be lazy waiting for she's not your servant.
Yeah.
And so from a very young age, those were things my father instilled in me, things that I still hold to a very high standard of myself to this very day.
Wow, that's awesome. Last question.
Yes.
What is your guilty pleasure? Now that we can that is G-rated.
Okay. Well, I was like, how
well, hold on here. Okay. But like, okay, I'll do. What's your favorite? Like, what's your TV show? What do you watch? What do you
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
I love Game of Thrones. I think I read the books and they were amazing.
Yeah.
This TV show, of course, is different, but anyways, a lot. That's for me, it's my favorite show.
Right.
I'm a huge soccer fan, so like I love watching everything soccer.
Really?
Sometimes before I go to sleep,
the beautiful game.
I'll watch soccer videos, like people playing FIFA.
Right. No, like playing the video game.
Playing the video game because I don't have time to play it.
So you just watch.
So I watch somebody else
vicariously.
So exactly
through their
because
games.
I only have maybe 20 minutes to watch something, or maybe just 5 minutes. But to me,
you don't watch
like,
the real people. You watch the video game. All right.
That's
all right.
Guilty pleasure.
Who inspires you?
There's a lot of people that inspire me, but I think for me, my father has always and will always be the biggest inspiration I have. Cool. I loved him as a man, as a human being. He was great.
If you could have one more, if you could ask your dad one more question, if you could have that chance to ask your dad a question, or would tell your dad something, what would it be?
Wow, that's a very good question.
I know it's deep.
I've never really thought of that.
Yeah, Studio 9 gets deep.
What's the biggest lesson? I'd ask him what's the biggest lesson he learned in life.
What do you think it would be? What do you think he?
I think he would say he learned from his dad the importance of chasing purpose. His father was a very flawed man, but he kicked my dad out when he was 17, and he said, "You have to go find your way. I found my way. You find your way." And it sort of forced my dad to really think hard about what he wanted to be, what he wanted to do. When other young men at that point in his life, really, when he used to tell me this, were like, drinking and getting into music and all that stuff. And he became very focused on what he wanted to do, which is how he got involved into politics and human rights activism.
Wow.
So chased his purpose.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I got to be respectful of your time. You have been amazing.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, and you are a blessing.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Steve.
Because you need to explain to me one more time the pronunciation of your last name, so everyone can remember, and everyone who's listening for the first time will know who you are, and then we're going to get into the story. So tell me, Michel, your name.
Yeah, so my name is Michel Chikwanine, and it's pronounced chick, like a little baby chicken.
Chick.
Wa, like a baby crying.
Wow.
Ni, the ni that we all have, and then ne, the sound the horse makes. So Chikwanine.